All right, diving in. This time, we've got this pretty intense transcript. Looks like a conversation, maybe from a video, all about blockchain.
Oh, yeah.
And get this, it's all in conversational Chinese.
Interesting. So we're getting like a glimpse into how another culture is thinking about this whole thing.
Exactly. I mean, this tech could change the world, right?
Yeah.
And luckily, I've got our blockchain expert here to help us unpack it all.
Glad to be here. It's definitely a dense one, lots to dig into.
Okay, so right off the bat, the source keeps saying blockchain is, well, it's more than just tech. They say it's a whole new way of thinking.
Mm.
They even compare it to, like, learning English. You can memorize all the words, but you got to think like a native speaker to really get it.
I see, yeah.
So what do they mean by that? What kind of thinking are we talking about here?
It's about decentralization, right? The internet, as we know it, Google, Facebook, all the big players, it's all built on centralized platforms.
Right. We're basically trusting those companies with everything. Our data, our money, our whole online lives.
Exactly. But blockchain, it throws that whole model out the window.
So instead of trusting one big entity, we're spreading that trust out.
Yeah, across a whole network. And that means rethinking how we approach security, verification, who holds the power. It's like, imagine trusting a single bank with all your money versus a system where everyone has a piece of the ledger.
Okay, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
But is that what the source means by virtualization? They keep using that word.
Right, right. They talk about it like, we're becoming almost godlike online with like clairvoyance and clairaudience. It's a bit out there.
Yeah, kind of spooky. But they're talking about how the internet's becoming our main reality, right? Shopping, working, even experiencing things we can't in the real world.
That's a key point. As that trend keeps growing, the question of who controls this virtual world gets even bigger.
Because right now it's those big companies, and they've got a ton of power. But this source seems to be saying blockchain could disrupt that whole dynamic.
Potentially, yeah. They use the example of money without banks. What if your money was safe just because you had it, not because some bank was vouching for you?
Wait, so no banks ATL? Is that what they're suggesting?
It's more about rethinking the role of these institutions. Take Bitcoin, for instance. That's like the poster child for blockchain.
Right. But so even if governments tried to shut it down,
Theoretically, it could still function because the network itself is the authority. Every transaction is recorded on this ledger, and it's copied on tons of computers.
so you'd have to hack like a zillion computers to change anything.
Pretty much. Makes it really hard to tamper with.
Okay, that's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like this unbreakable chain, and everyone's got a copy, super secure. But I'm still fuzzy on the HOW. It's like everyone having a giant accounting spreadsheet.
It's more complicated than that, but the analogy works. Think of it like every transaction being announced to the whole network and checked by multiple people.
Like having millions of witnesses to every transaction.
Yeah, something like that. Makes it almost impossible to cheat.
Okay, so no more fudging those numbers.
Yeah.
But the source also talks about blockchain as a threat. A threat to who, exactly?
Well, they single out companies like Google and Amazon. They're vulnerable to attacks on their central servers.
Right, right. One big target.
With blockchain, the network itself becomes the server. It's distributed, so even if some computers go down...
The whole thing keeps running.
Exactly. That resilience makes it a real threat to those big companies we depend on so much. But the source goes even further. They're not just talking about Bitcoin. They think blockchain could be applied to, well, practically everything we do online.
Okay, I'm all ears. Hit me with some of these potential applications.
Well, they start with this interesting example. They say, imagine Minecraft built on blockchain.
Wait, Minecraft? The video game, what does that have to do with anything?
Think about it. Minecraft is all about building things, creating virtual resources, mooning stuff. What if those resources were scarce and valuable, just like in the real world?
So instead of just playing around, it's like you actually OWN that diamond sword. Like it has real value.
Exactly. And that ownership is tracked and secured using blockchain. People already spend real money on virtual stuff. This just takes it way further.
Wow. So blockchain could completely change how we think about games and virtual worlds. It's not just for money anymore.
Exactly. We're talking decentralized ownership, player-driven economies, scarcity that actually matters. It's a big shift.
It is. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But wait, the source mentions YouTube too. How does that fit in?
They say a truly decentralized YouTube wouldn't be controlled by, one company. Content would be spread across the network, with creators and viewers having more direct control.
So it's like taking that power to the people idea and applying it to the internet.
That's the gist of it. It's a pretty radical idea, but it shows how blockchain could disrupt even the biggest platforms we use every day.
This is getting intense. I'm seeing a pattern here, though. It's like blockchain is this force pushing for more decentralized models everywhere.
That's a key takeaway. And to wrap this part up, the source makes a bold statement. They say blockchain and AI, those are the two biggest forces shaping our future.
Whoa, two heavy hitters.
Mhm.
So we're talking about a technology that could, like, reshape society, whether we like it or not.
That's what they seem to be saying. But whenever something is hyped up like this, I always get a little cautious. Is blockchain really all it's cracked up to be, or are there downsides we need to watch out for?
That's a great question. And it's one that the source seems to be wrestling with, too. They're not totally convinced that a fully decentralized world is actually a good thing. After all, centralized systems exist for a reason, right?
Right, there must be some trade-offs. And figuring out what those are, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, it's like they present this utopian vision, this decentralized world where everything's perfect, but then they keep hitting these moments of doubt, like, is it really going to be better if we get rid of the middleman everywhere? Right. Part of me is like, yeah, get rid of the banks, the big tech companies, all of them. More control over my data, my finances. Yeah, sign me up. But then I think, what if something goes wrong?
Exactly. They have this example, losing your Bitcoin wallet password.
Ooh, yeah.
In a decentralized system, no one can help you recover that. It's
Yeah.
gone. Just like that.
That is scary. It's like, yeah, you get more control, but the stakes are suddenly way higher.
And it goes beyond just money, too. Think about online content. They talk about blockchain creating a truly open internet with no censorship. Sounds good, right?
Sure, in theory.
But then you could have all this misinformation spreading like wildfire, hate speech, everything, all that stuff platforms are trying to control now.
It's like a trade-off. More freedom, but also more potential for bad stuff.
Exactly. And they get into intellectual property, too.
Mhm.
Imagine platforms for sharing software, but they're totally decentralized. How do you protect the creators?
Yeah, that's a good point. It can be amazing for access, but then what about the incentive to create new things if piracy is just running rampant?
Right. And who's accountable when things go wrong? In a centralized system, you know who to blame. But with decentralization.
It's like the blame is spread out across this whole network.
Yeah. So how do you even address that?
This is where my brain starts to melt a little bit. It's like so much potential, but then these huge questions about making it actually work. Do you think a fully decentralized society is even realistic? I mean, is it possible?
That's the big question, isn't it? The source, they don't really give a straight answer, but they do say that the whole thing depends on mass adoption.
Right. It can't just be like a niche thing for tech people. It has to be something everyone uses.
Exactly. But getting everyone on board, that's a huge challenge. Blockchain, it's complex, there's a steep learning curve, and people are used to the systems we have now.
And there's the trust issue too, right? If there's no central authority, how do you know you can trust the network itself?
Right, how do you know it's not being manipulated? They bring up that tension. It's like the tech is way ahead of our ability to deal with the consequences, like the ethical and social impacts.
So are we just stuck with a centralized world then? Is that it?
Not necessarily. They suggest there might be a middle ground, like systems that combine elements of both.
Oh, interesting. So not throwing out the whole system, but kind of adding to it.
Yeah, like using blockchain to improve transparency and accountability, but within existing structures. You're adding those layers of security and trust.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can be strategic about it. Find the sweet spot.
That seems to be their point. And it goes back to something they said before. Is blockchain a solution looking for a problem?
Oh yeah, we can't just like slap blockchain on everything and expect it to fix all our problems.
Right, we have to be smart about it, figure out where it really makes things better. And they seem to be urging caution. Don't get caught up in the hype.
Yeah, think critically. Weigh the pros and cons.
Exactly. Don't assume it's this cure-all for everything.
So it's about finding those specific areas where decentralization truly shines.
Yeah.
But even then, there are all these other implications. The source brought up inequality, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. They say if blockchain is mainly used by people who are already like tech savvy and wealthy.
It could make the digital divide even worse.
Exactly. Instead of democratizing things, it could just concentrate wealth and power in the hands of the people who already have it.
That's not the future I want to see.
Yeah.
And then there's the environmental question too.
Ah, right. The energy consumption. Some blockchain networks, especially those using proof of work.
That's Bitcoin's thing, right? Proof of work.
Yeah. So computers compete to solve complex math problems to validate transactions, and all that computing power uses a ton of electricity.
So the more popular blockchain gets, the worse it is for the environment.
That's the concern. But they do talk about solutions like alternative consensus mechanisms like proof of stake.
Proof of stake. Okay, how's that different?
So instead of relying on computing power, validators put up their own cryptocurrency as collateral. It's like a security deposit.
So if they try to cheat the system, they lose their money.
Right. It's a built-in incentive, to be honest. And because it doesn't need all that computing power, it's way more energy efficient.
That makes sense. Are there other ways to make blockchain more sustainable?
They mention using renewable energy to power the networks. Imagine running it all on solar or wind.
That would be awesome. A green blockchain.
And there are people working on making blockchain itself more efficient, like optimizing the algorithms to reduce its footprint.
It sounds like there are solutions out there, which is good. It would be a shame if this technology ended up harming the planet.
Yeah, they seem to agree. It's like we need to be thoughtful about how we use blockchain, make sure we're using its power for good, and minimizing the negative impacts.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah,
We need to be excited about the potential, but also realistic about the challenges.
exactly. It's like they're saying, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Blockchain can be incredibly beneficial, but we have to approach it carefully.
We're still in the early stages of understanding blockchain, aren't we? It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
We are, but even now, it's clear that it has the potential to change everything. Industries, economies, how we live, how we interact.
It's exciting and a little scary all at the same time. But the source also brought up some big concerns about how blockchain could affect society as a whole. What were some of those?
One that stood out to me was the potential for blockchain to undermine trust in, well, traditional institutions.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. What do they mean?
Well, they argue that as people get more comfortable with decentralized systems, they might start relying less on things like banks and governments.
So if we don't need banks to handle our money, governments to provide services,
Yeah.
what happens to those institutions? What's their role?
That's a question they don't really answer, but they suggest it could lead to a whole reimagining of how society works, like the whole agreement between individuals and the institutions that govern them.
Wow, that's a huge EE shift. Are we talking about a total societal collapse here? Like everything falls apart?
Yeah. It's a possibility. But they also say it could lead to a more collaborative and equitable society where power is distributed more evenly, where individuals have more control.
So it doesn't have to be all bad. It could actually be a force for good.
Potentially, but again, it all comes back to how we use this technology.
Right, it's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used in different ways. The source seems to be really hammering that point home. It's up to US to decide how blockchain shapes the future.
Okay.
That's a good takeaway. It puts the responsibility on us, the users, the developers, everyone. We have to make sure it's used ethically.
And that we're having these conversations, asking the tough questions, demanding that blockchain is used to create the future we actually want.
It's not just about the tech itself, it's about the values behind it. That's really sticking with me. It feels like we're just scratching the surface here.
We are. It's complex, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What are you taking away from all this?
It really is complex, huh? The more we talk about it, the more layers there are. I'm still pretty excited about what blockchain could do, but I'm definitely not as naive as I was when we started this deep dive.
That's the thing about really digging into something. You start with a simple idea, and then suddenly, bam, you're down this rabbit hole of questions and implications.
The source even questions whether a completely decentralized world is even possible, you know? Or even if it's a good thing, like all those security issues, accountability, who's in charge.
Right. They keep saying maybe we DO need some kind of central authority, at least somewhere. It's like, how much freedom is too much freedom? At what point does it just become chaos?
Makes me think of those dystopian sci-fi stories where everything falls apart because there are no rules anymore.
It's about finding that balance, right? And I think the source is pushing us to move past the hype, the utopian dreams, and look at things realistically. What does a decentralized world really look like? What are the trade-offs?
It's not just about the tech, it's about the values we bring to it. Are we willing to sacrifice some individual freedom for the sake of stability? Or do we go all in on decentralization and hope for the best?
Big questions for sure. And it goes beyond just blockchain, right? Any technology that could change society this much, we have to think about these things.
Even question whether blockchain is like a solution looking for a problem. Are we trying to force it into situations where it doesn't belong?
Yeah, is it really the best tool for the job, or are we just caught up in the excitement? Especially with all the money pouring into it, it's easy to get carried away.
Like that whole NFT craze a while back. Was that really about blockchain or just about making a quick buck?
It's easy to get caught up in the hype,
Hmm.
but we have to step back and ask, what problem are we trying to solve here? Who benefits? And what could go wrong?
It's like they're saying, hey, don't be sheep. Think for yourselves,
Hmm.
which I appreciate.
Exactly. And it goes back to that idea of blockchain as a mindset shift. It's not just about using a new technology. It's about changing how we think about trust, about power, about working together.
Moving away from those big centralized systems that we're so used to, but what does that actually look like, in the real world?
It could mean changing how we govern ourselves,
Yeah.
how we handle our money, how we share information. It could mean giving more power to individuals, to communities, things we can't even imagine right now.
So it's not just about tech. It's about challenging the status quo, rethinking how society works.
Yeah, it's a journey into the unknown. We need to be brave, curious, and open to new possibilities.
That's actually a pretty inspiring way to think about blockchain. It's not just about algorithms, it's about human potential.
And it starts with asking the right questions, talking to each other, being willing to change our minds.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface here, but this has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks to our expert for taking us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure. These conversations were always so stimulating, and it's great to have someone like you to bounce ideas off of.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us as we explored the wild world of blockchain. We hope you learned something new and that we've given you something to think about.
Remember, we're all creating the future together, one choice at a time.
So keep asking questions, keep learning, keep diving deep. Until next time, stay curious, folks.